Oh, okay.
The only person that's I think can make it.
He's on vacation. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Well, hi, I'm John Latimer.
So speak.
So should
When-
I just get into a lecture of it, or do you want to
Sure.
ask questions?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah. I mean, if we have questions, I'm sure we'll just kind of
All right.
shout them out.
All right, so I'm here to talk a little bit about sponsorships and how that can work and how it affects artists and how it mainly affects the promoters that they're going to be working with. So depending on which hat you're wearing in the industry, if you're a musician or a performer or a promoter or a talent buyer or whatever it is that you are. First of all, there are three types of sponsors. The first type is media sponsor. And a media sponsor would be someone who gives time on the radio or inches in their newspaper in return for putting their logo on the event in some way or multiple ways. And so the second type of sponsor would be a corporate sponsor. And they're the ones who pay money to do the same thing. They want their logo put on an event or a project or even a CD if they're going to sponsor that. And the third type of sponsor is a trade sponsor. And that type of sponsor would be one who trades goods and services for their possibility of putting their logo or company name on the event. And so they work in combination with each other. So typically, the best way to do this is to go after media sponsors first. They're the very first target that a talent buyer or a concert promoter or event promoter would want to use would go after media sponsor. The reason why is because once you secure media, now you can go after corporate sponsors, and the corporate sponsors will say, wow, I'm going to be able to get my logo on that media as well, in that newspaper or on that radio as a tag or on that TV or on that website or whatever media is attracted to becoming a sponsor of the event. So you, or talent buyers, or probably not talent buyers, concert promoters would be looking at media sponsors primarily first. Once they expire all those possibilities, because you want to get as many as possible, the more you have, the more you can ask the corporate dollars to be increased. So, if you had $1 million worth of media exposure, that would be worth a lot of money to corporate dollars coming in. So if you only have one small little, media outlet, and it's not worth much of a deal, your corporate dollars are going to be greatly diminished. So it's a sales job. So if someone's got to go out and actually knock on the door of media sponsors and try and convince them that the event or the concert or whatever it is that's being worked is in the best interest of that media to want to get involved with that event in the first place. So if you reversed it and you don't go after media first and you go after corporate first, you run into that same problem because corporate's going to say, well, you mean I'm not going to be on the radio and I'm not going to have an opportunity to put my logo in the newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. Call me next time. Well, that's why you got to go after media first. It works very well to do that. Then you focus on either corporate or trade. Now, it depends on how you're doing this. And in a way, they can be two separate ones. So, for example, if the concert promoter wants to get T-shirts made for their event, they may go to a T-shirt manufacturer or a silkscreen company and say, in return for you giving me so many T-shirts, I will put your name in the sponsorship column of what we're doing in order to make that work. Going after that same T-shirt company for cash as a corporate sponsor instead of a trade sponsor may run into resistance because it's actually cheaper for them to be a trade sponsor than it is to be a corporate sponsor because they get discounts on buying the T-shirts and doing the silk screening and that kind of thing. So the trade sponsors would much rather do a trade sponsorship deal than they would a corporate sponsorship deal for that main reason. So going after corporate is another sales job. Someone's got to knock on the door. Someone's got to make the introductions. And they're going to, first question, what do I get out of the deal? You know, I'm giving you money, and do I trust you? And why should I part with 50 cents of anything to give to you for this event? So in order to do that, you have to put together a sponsorship kit in order for the sponsor to kind of get an idea of what's going on. Like a cover letter, first of all, about what the event's about. A little bio about the event, maybe past history, some photos, some things that the corporation can see from the past stuff that you've done. And we'll talk about first time in a minute, but if you have some history, it's so much easier. They're going to want to see how this works. So it behooves the concert promoter in previous years to take photos that always have a corporate sponsor in the photo. So when they're showing it to future corporate sponsors, they can say, see, here's your logo on the fence, and here's your logo behind the stage, and here's your logo on the ticket, and here's your logo on the back of a t-shirt, et cetera, et cetera. So now the corporate sponsors can say, oh, I see that, I see that, I see what's happening here, I'm a lot more interested than saying, well, you know, that's a maybe, and that's an if, and I don't know. So showing them proof that there's results for their dollars goes a long, long way. And so anyway, you put together the sponsorship kit. So in addition to the letter would be a benefit list. And the way that I do this is I'll list a whole bunch of benefits that that sponsor will get out of that event by being a sponsor. They will get this, 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 and this. They'll get announcements from stage. They'll get VIP tickets. They'll get, you know, their logo on the wall. They'll get, I don't know, they'll have the right to coupon or to poll at the door or whatever. And you come up with a list of benefits. And we have to recognize that sponsors, corporate sponsors, don't always want to pay the same amount because you can't have 15 title sponsors. And what I mean by this is that there's different levels of sponsorship. So a title sponsor would be one that puts their name on the event. A good example would be like the Huntington Bank Tall Ships Festival here in Cleveland. So when the tall ships come in to the harbor, Huntington has their name all over everything. So they can't call it the Huntington Bank Budweiser, you know, Salem Cigarettes Tropicana Tall Ship Festival. It could, but it won't really work that well. So it's usually one title sponsor. And then you get into levels of gold sponsorship, you know, silver sponsorship level, or bronze, or whatever. So what you want to do is take all your benefits and break them into what each of those sponsors would receive. So if you're a gold sponsor, you may receive everything on that benefit list. Where if you're a bronze sponsor, you may get the last 10 things on the list, or the last 5 things on the list. You don't get everything.
So it's kind of like how Kickstarter works.
Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Well,
It
if you're
could, if you set it up that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
different levels.
So that way you can identify, you can say, okay, of the gold sponsors, I want to go after 3. I want to target maybe only 3 that are going to be the bigger dollar ones. Because once again, you can't overload because the event will just be all sponsors and it just looks too cheesy. And as a concert promoter, you want to create a magical moment, so you want to avoid the cheesiness of your magical moment, right? So in order to do that, you got to keep it in check a little bit. But if you set your prices right, you can do this. So my philosophy is when I do events and concerts and things like that, I always try and think of break even before the doors open. That's how I like to think. Any tickets that I sell is gravy on the cake. Cake have gravy? You know what I mean. Icing on the cake or gravy on the noodles, or however you look at it. So when I do an event, I try to think of it so that the sponsorships will completely pay for the event. And that way, when I get into doing the event, I don't have to worry about making or losing money because I've already broke even before the doors open. It's not always easy, but that's the goal. And that way, any tickets that are sold after that point is profit. And a lot of times you have split points with artists anyway, and so it increases their split point and so forth, so it works out in a good way for them as well as for the promoter. So then you come up with an agreement after you knock on the door and they say, yeah, you got to present them with the sponsorship agreement, which says that they get this, and this in return for a check for this amount of money. And then certainly you want to keep the sponsor up to date with everything you do. If there's a problem, tell the sponsor immediately. Nobody wants to be on a sinking ship. So if the radio station gets word that the event is about to go under or not do so well, they may just say, hey, let's bump up our time. We want this event to be successful. We don't want to be on a loser. So let's bump it up. Let's try and make this better. So it's much better to communicate with the sponsors so that they know where you are and what's going on with the event. And there's no chicanery this way. And everybody's up to date with what's going on, and everybody understands what's happening, and there's no surprises, for anybody involved. Once the event is successful, the easiest sale in the world. You in again? Yeah, I'm in again. Done. No more phone calls. You just issue the contract. They already know what the deal is, and it's so much easier the second time, third time, fourth time. As long as the event keeps being successful, that sponsor will keep coming on board, and all you have to do is say, want to do it again? Yeah. Okay, so that first sale is the toughest. Once that's in, everything else works into place. Now, if you've never done an event and you've never had any sponsors, it's not as easy because now you have to, prove who you are, and you have to establish your intentions, and you have to show who's involved collaborative-wise, as far as other sponsors or, media that may be or may not be involved, and all these identifications have to come up before the corporate sponsor will say, yeah. And usually at that point, you're looking at smaller events because you've got to start small anyway. You can't just bop right into a gig at the Q and trying to sell sponsorships on that kind of level. It's not that easy. You got to start small, and as they trust you and build with you, you've grown, and after a couple years, now you're into the league that you can do that. Some of the people that sell sponsorships make very, very good money.
How would there be a way to for the sponsor to track their success as far as what they're getting back in the return from that?
It's not always that easy, and it's not always based on how many people show up. I like to look at the use of, I guess the word is eyeballs. How many people saw the logo?
Right.
That's what they're interested in. That's branding. How many people are being branded? So if the event has nobody show up and the sponsor said, you didn't even have anybody show up, you can say, yeah, but your logo was seen by 500,000 people.
Right.
Because of the media.
Because of media exposure. So they can complain, but you can come right back and say, what I promised is exactly what you got. If I didn't deliver, there's another issue, but the point is that you should deliver what you say. You should over-deliver every time. So if you do that, then they can say, oh, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm sorry nobody showed up. Yeah, me too. But that's how you combat that. And so when you offer your benefits, make sure that you can deliver on those benefits and not oversell it. And promoters are real good at overselling. So you got to just avoid that total issue,
And how do you get the media interest, initially when you're trying to get that, talking to the media, how do you get their interest in doing it?
Cindy would be a lot better person to speak on that than I. You had to deal with this end of it. I'm always on the selling side. I'm never on the buying side. So a lot of it, first of all, before you chime in, is relationships. You know, this business is all about networking and relationships, 100%. So if I were to call up someone at the Plain Dealer, even though they do Plain Dealer charities, not a good example, the Scene Magazine, and pitch the idea, then based on my relationship, they may just say, yeah, we trust you, we know you, we're in. If they don't know you, it's good to build a relationship, you know, go out to lunch and get to know some people, and then, you know, as you're doing things, tell them that you're starting small and you're trying to build and trying to make that together. But it's not my call. Please, Cindy, lay it on us.
Well, when I was at I helped build the Free Times, creating sponsorship kind of relationships.
You built the free time.
I was the editor of the Free Times for 6 years.
You're amazing.
Yes, she is amazing.
You're amazing. It's like,
But I helped build up the paper with my old relationships that I had, like for the film festival, for example, who I'd been working for a really long time. So to sell their printing. So we'll sponsor your event and we'll kick in a lower cost printing and advertising package for you. If you spend X amount of dollars, we're giving you Y, you know. So it's oftentimes if you can take some of that corporate money, it's usually a three-way deal. So you take some of that corporate money and you give it to the media person and they kick you back at least 50% of what you're getting. You don't have to pay. It's almost like the media becomes a trade sponsor because they're giving you space in the paper or they're giving you something at a lower rate than you would have gotten, but you're using corporate dollars to get that.
mm-hmm.
That's the way I always like to work. And I would usually, because media, especially these days, are scrambling for dollars. So they're willing to deeply discount. Or they're willing to do something where they're bringing their own corporate sponsor. Oftentimes a media entity can bring their own corporate sponsor to the table and get money for your event that way. Because you're giving them exposure that they can turn around and sell.
And for radio, they call that non-traditional revenue, or NTR. So the NTR department would be the non-traditional revenue, so they could go to their corporate people that are already spending money with them and say, hey, we have this opportunity for you, and they'll sell the deal for you, but then they'll take their commission, basically, in order to return that. Now, back in the day, you didn't have to buy any. There was no corporate. You could just, you were in, and then you got corporate in, and so forth. But I think Clear Channel changed it all when they said, well, we don't do that anymore. It's going to be buy one, get one. And the same kind of deal where you have to buy an ad in order for them to give you an ad. And that's how they end up doing their corporate sponsorships with that. So it's a whole different game
Than it used to.
than it used to be, for good or bad. Everyone's scrambling for different things, and now with the internet changing pretty much everything in the industry, it really put a real crimp in the sponsorships. Even though there's people out there that are doing it every day. Barry Gable, he's really, really good at what he does. And he could pick up the phone, and it's based on relationships, and just pull the deals together that quickly.
I mean, you can give away tickets to the event, to the media, and then they end up using that as perks for their regular advertisers. That's one option that they might like. I'm sure Barry does that. I mean, Barry books the Hard Rock Casino and works for Live Nation. He's he's a Belkin but doesn't have that last name.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's right.
I'm sure he does that all the time. trades,
Mhm.
trades
All
ticket,
day.
trades tickets
All
for,
day long.
for space.
He's so good at it.
So how small an event, how small an event is okay to start with then? Are we talking just like a regular
Your show at Mayhall's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. You can
Sure.
start with a local car dealer who wants to sponsor an event for $500, and then you're off and running with a $500 gig, of some sort. We did one at the Beachland years ago when we were doing the class here at Tri-C. We did a concert event, and we had three
That's right. You were
three
doing
shows.
You were,
We did Latin jazz, then we turned the house and we did alternative rock, we turned the house and we did hip hop. And I had students that went out and did the sponsorship things, and we ended up being able to pay the artists and pay for the promotions and help to get this thing up and running, and they got a lot out of it. It worked out really well. So
That was before they started cracking down on the sponsorships.
well, yeah, problem was that the students were getting into contractual obligations, and then who's liable? The student or Tri-C? Right. So kind of like that's why they moved everything to the black box here when they do their events now, because the students shouldn't be in a contractual, as a class project, they get into a contract.
yeah, right.
So that was a little glitch that I never even considered when I was doing that.
So, from a band perspective, what would be some of the concerns that a band is performing, say, on something like this? Like, what should they be thinking about if they're asked to do a gig like this?
Yes, good question. So the question, in case you didn't hear, was what should a band think about in this, if there are sponsorships involved? First of all, it depends on the level of the band. But one thing that I learned early in this game was never to put a sponsor name behind the band on stage. People taking pictures, and then there's a Budweiser logo behind the band, and they are sponsored by Miller or endorsed by Miller.
Right.
And there's a conflict of that. So if the artist is already being endorsed through an instrument company or some maybe other corporate deals, they have to make sure that when they're doing the deal that those signs are going behind them that may be in conflict to their contract with that other organization. So one thing I don't like to do is to ever put a corporate sponsor behind the band when they're performing. However, I will put a banner of the event name behind them, and sometimes on that banner underneath and smaller logos would be some of those corporate sponsors, and I think that's okay. I don't like the big blown out logo of some corporate sponsors behind it. On the sidewalls, that's fine. The other thing, and this happens on the bigger acts, and the agents will actually be the ones who bring this to the light, saying, so you have corporate sponsors, so how much is my artist receiving of that money? And as the concert promoter, you may say, well, that wasn't part of our deal. And they're going to say, well, but you wouldn't have that corporate sponsors if I didn't have this particular artist performing on that stage. And it's a valid point. Yes and no. A lot of times the corporate sponsors are lined up before you have any artists. You just say we're going to go after bigger name acts, but you don't have any secured yet. But a lot of times the artist thinks that the corporate comes in because they're on stage and therefore they want a piece of that. And the agents are the ones who have picked up on that. And in some ways I could see that. And especially if you do the break even when doors open and the artist gets a flat fee, but you have all this extra money, they're going to say, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. So whether there is or not, it's perceived that there's something wrong. And so that just has to be identified up there. That's really how I look at it. It's just making sure the logos don't overlap. Gotcha. Were you going to say something?
Just that's why you need good contracts.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Right.
That's for sure.
Do you have bands come to the Beachland with sponsorships that often, or?
Not that often. I mean, anymore. There used to be more of that. I mean, I remember when BR549 was sponsored by Jack Daniels, and they were traveling in a bus that had a complete Jack Daniels wrap on it, you know, so they were driving around the country with Jack Daniels posters, basically billboards on the side of their buses. But Jack Daniels picked up on that, picked up the bill for the bus, so they got a free bus, basically. But I mean, different people have, now it's kind of more, what's happening now more is charities. So they're figuring out how to tax advantage their personal charities through some nonprofit that they're affiliating themselves with. Like we just did that, what's that name of the bleachers? There's a guy from Fun. So we had to take $1 for every ticket and put it into his nonprofit. So we're writing a check separate for that charity. But it's not, you know, it's not really a sponsorship or anything. I mean, people have sponsorships, you know, that they put at their merch table sometimes, you know. I mean, if they're a great drummer and they get free drum gear, they might be contractually obligated to have a little sign of, like, you know, what's it, Zildjian, you know, something like that might be at the merch table.
I mean, is it practical to think like a band could get the kind of Jack Daniels sponsorship to enable them to tour if they're a smaller band? Like, would they have to have, what kind of leverage would they have to
Well,
attract?
it's on that level. It's called an endorsement. It's different than a sponsorship. It's similar, but the company is endorsing the artist, and it's an endorsement deal. Is what they somehow. What I've always called it. And yes, the artist would have to present the same type of sponsorship kit to the corporate sponsor to get them involved. And that way they showed what's responsible for each one. Now, normally these endorsers will not part with any money. They'll part with gear, like Zildjian symbols, that kind of thing. And usually not until the artist has, bona fide national tours set up where they can expose that Zildjian symbol to thousands of people. Yeah. Startups can get like a guitar string deal and those kind of things, but usually for the bigger equipment types of things, it's got to be a bigger name artist. Okay. And then some companies don't offer them, like Roland, they don't offer sponsorship deals. And that's why when you see artists that are playing Roland keyboards on TV, they always black out the back of the keyboard, yeah. So they're not endorsing Roland. And because Roland won't give them the keyboard for free, they don't want their name to be on the front of the keyboard. And so when you see it on TV, you go, what is that, tape on the back of that keyboard? Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's smart. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So.
I mean, from a venue point of view, it would be great if every band went out and got sponsorships for themselves so they could get paid and the venue didn't have to pay the band. I mean, I would love that, Go ahead.
Well, if you were promoting an event, just like a regular, 3-band bill or something like that, you'd want to get enough sponsorships to at least cover like door and sound cost, right? That's where you'd want to start. And then
any cost.
Well, any cost, yeah.
Yeah, any cost. I mean, if you are helping yourself by helping them, so you're distributing coupons for Melt, for example. Melt's your sponsor for your show, and you're going to pass out discount coupons at your show to 50 to 100 people. But now the band gets free Melt for the rest of your life. or something, you know, you get benefit for something,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
One deal I was trying to put together a couple years ago was a 3-part endorsement deal for artists on the road. I was trying to get a deal with Red Roof Inn, Denny's, and Speedway. So they could get hotel rooms, they could have a place to eat at Denny's, and get gas in their vehicle. So this way, an artist on the road has a 3-way endorsement deal going where they could actually survive even if they didn't make any money. They could eat at Denny's, they could stay in a
That's really
hotel,
great. That's a
and they
good
could
idea.
use gasoline, and that's all they, there's no cash, but you will need to get to the next town, stop at Speedway or BP or whatever it's going to be, and you need a place to stay, there's a Red Roof Inn. And you need a place to eat, there's a Denny's right down the street. So this never came about, but I was this close to pulling it off, and the problem is I didn't have enough artists in my.
right, you need a huge volume.
I didn't
You need
have
it to be a
have
co-op.
that, and I was putting that
Right.
together with artists all
Right.
over my network that I had developed, and it just never panned out. But I thought it was going to work. I was like, wow, this will work because now everyone's getting everyone's benefiting all the way around, and all the artist has to do is thanks Denny's, from the stage every night,
Right.
and we're staying over at the Red Roof Inn. Don't come visit us, or whatever.
Chipotle used to do that for a while on their website. If you're a touring band, you go on to Chipotle, show them a tour poster or whatever, and they would give you free food.
Yeah, I think it could work, but it's just got to be managed, and sold. And the hard
Right.
part's the selling. I was knocking on Acor's door a long, long time trying to get Red Roof Inn involved. Motel 6, it's the same company, so just didn't work.
That's a brilliant idea.
But that way, when they come into the Beachlands,
Yeah.
hey, where you staying? Oh, I know where you're staying. It's already there. There's a Denny's down the road. See you later. Bye.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I mean, at this point, do corporate sponsors look at internet-based media as valuable or of value?
Well, when you pitch corporate, you want to make sure you have everything ready before you do that. So part of your mix, your media mix, is online.
Mm-hmm.
So in Cleveland.com, even though it's owned by the Plain Dealer, it's not Plain Dealer Charities for some reason. So you can go to Cleveland.com, but you can't go to the Plain Dealer unless it's with one of their charities. Same with the Cleveland Browns. You have to go to Cleveland Browns Charities in order to get the Cleveland Browns to endorse your show or sponsor your show. But with where was it?
Online media.
Online. So like Cleveland.com will work out, and there's other ones like Cleve Scene for the Scene magazine. They'll use that in addition to the print when you do that, so you get both. And then there's like Cool Cleveland, Tom's
Already.
who may or may not want to get involved, but then you use those numbers when you're putting together your corporate dollars. You say, well, we have this many online eyeballs, we have this many print eyeballs, we have this many television, and I didn't want to say radio eyeballs because there's no such thing, but you get the idea. You're branding all the time, and so when you pitch it, you've got to have your media done. So that's why media is first, and then when you make the pitch, then you can add up all those eyeballs, and that's what they're paying for. So they're not paying actually to have their name announced from the stage, even though that's a nice benefit. They're paying for branding. They're paying for the eyeballs.
This is the sponsorship for Waterloo Arts Festival.
Oh, it looks very
Right,
professional.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
I didn't do this,
Oh,
no.
that's very nice.
Actually, Meredith, who's one of our band
Did
people.
you make the moves to get the sponsors?
Pardon?
Did you make the moves to get the sponsors?
The Waterloo Arts Fest put this together.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
so it's the other nonprofit that's on Waterloo. It's the yeah.
So she designed it.
So Meredith designed it.
That's cool.
Yeah. But we're developing a rock solid stage, so John's giving me some ideas about how we
Good.
should maybe, brand our own stage, our Rock Solid stage, get some additional sponsorship dollars for
Heck
that.
yeah.
I was thinking about maybe a concert series of some sort, where we could, like, where each of the artists can headline a show, have other artists on the bill, and then have someone talking about Rock Solid at the concert. You know,
Who would you think of for sponsorship for that? Off the top of your head.
Well, maybe talk to some of these, Jack Prince and some of the more music-oriented
Sure.
businesses that are in
Mhm.
town already, because that's who we're going to pull in for the summit anyway. So to sort
SIT
of
Strings, Quaker Devices,
Right,
Dr. Z.
right.
Kind of groove.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, we have a relationship with it.
Russell?
Yeah. But I think it just would be a way, because then that way we could promote Rock Solid to other bands and maybe find some bands that might be able to continue it. You know, some of the openers could be future people that we work
Sure.
with. You know.
Sure.
You're talking more of like a series versus like one-off event.
Yeah, I'm saying like a series. Maybe do it. Maybe link up with some other venues and do it at other places, and then that way
Mm-hmm.
we can be talking about it in different venues.
Right.
You
move
know
it
what I mean?
around.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know.
Sure. No, sponsorship's a good idea, like trying to find somebody else's money to promote your event.
Well, yeah.
It's basically
The hardest
like
thing
trying
is the
to
sales.
Yeah.
I mean, you really got to change your whole attitude. It's not the music business anymore, Dorothy. It's sales, and you've got someone that has to be professional and organized, and actually, look the part of a person knocking on corporate doors. It's not an easy gig unless you're versed at it. It's just it has to be done, but you've got to get the right person in there, and you've got to look the corporate part, and that's not always so easy for people in this industry.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you don't ask.
If you don't ask, the answer's up yours, buddy. So you got to ask, and and depending on how you go about it.
Because they might be looking for a way to get more eyes on their product, on their brand, and you happen to walk in the door and nobody else did. So
Sure.
you know,
Russell, good to see you.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure out, obviously, how to get more sponsorship dollars into the beach land constantly, because we can't rely on just the...
I would recommend you come up with a series, and then you sell the series. Because sponsors love series. They don't want one-offs. It's like the
Yeah.
Budweiser concert series at Blossom. They get every show. And so if you were to put together Tuesdays or singer-songwriter night, or however, and it doesn't even have to be regular Tuesday, it can just be singer-songwriter. We're going to put you into that singer-songwriter series. And then all the singer-songwriters are part of all, and look at how many shows we've got. So now you can sell the sponsorships based on that whole thing, instead of doing one-offs. And nightclubs, that's the hard part. If you're going to do one-offs, it's so much harder. But if you put together a series, and you say, well, we have a lot of blues acts in the next 3 months. Oh, we got a blues series. Right?
Yeah.
And you look at your schedule and you say, well, we've got a lot of artists coming in from Florida. Maybe we can go up to Tropicana and,
right.
and just call it the Florida series. I mean, I'm just brainstorming,
right. And they know that that branding is going to be there for all those
but
events.
every event, and you can get bigger dollars,
Keep
and
working for that.
yes, exactly. So the series things will work best for you. Absolutely. Then the one-offs.
Yeah.
We're going to say we're going to have 100 people. They're going to say, go pound salt, We're going to have 2,500 minimum before we'll get involved with anybody. Well, we've got 100. We got 2,500.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
Sorry.
we've done good with beer sponsors, but I'm starting to think of, what else can we go after? Like car dealerships. There's like 5 million commercials for cars on TV.
Right.
Why don't we, if we could get test drives, so many test drives by Beachland customers for some, you know.
Heck yeah, give away keys. You know,
I mean, I also,
one key is gonna start the car.
I mean, I also know just from working in brand marketing, like,
Well, yeah,
There's-
you did that.
there's all kinds of companies that, like, you know, we're trying to, like, say, like, GM comes in, they're trying to push their new car, you know, they're looking to get that local market,
Yes, they
you
are.
know, so, and, you know, if we, you know, if you could look on paper for them, they're in, you know, Detroit or whatever, you know, and they're gonna, you know, put down that corporate money just to get their name out there, or the marketing company will, you know, to have their vehicles on that site
Mhm.
while those people are there, you know. I mean,
Yes.
there's tons of money in that, you know, obviously.
Well, I've got a good story for you along the same line. There's a field marketing companies that don't, not necessarily corporate, but they work for corporate, and they're marketing companies. So I was in Columbus, and you may have heard this in class, but I was in Columbus, and I went into a club with a friend of mine, and when we got there, there were two girls at the door asking us if we wanted a pack of cigarettes. And I'm not a smoker, but my friend was, and I said no, and he kicked me. He says, take it so I can have it.
Yeah, right,
And so
right.
we got 2 packs of cigarettes. Now when we walked in the door, there was a table set up. And at the table, you give them your email address, and they give you 2 drink tickets. And then next to that person was another woman giving away CDs of the artist who was playing that night. So, of course, I took my drink tickets, I took my CD, went and got 1 drink, and then I went directly to the band. Did they buy these from you? Are you donating them? What was the deal? They said, no, they bought 500 CDs from us
Wow,
to give away tonight.
that's awesome.
We have to thank them from the stage a few times during the evening.
Wow,
Okay.
that's really
So I did the math.
smart.
I did the math, and I started thinking, okay, so they got 2 women at the door giving away product. They've got 2 women. They've got 2 more women sitting inside, so they're paying 4 people to be at this small club. Now, if you've ever been to Ruby Tuesdays in Columbus, it is small. 2 little rooms of maybe 150, 200 people each. So 500 CDs for the band didn't make any sense to me, but this is what they did. So they had to hire 4 people. They had to give away packs of cigarettes to everybody came in. They had to buy the drink tickets to redeem that with the venue, and they had to pay for the CDs from the band. Then, 2 weeks later, I get another pack of cigarettes in the mail because they had taken my information that I had filled out when I got my 2 drink tickets, and in the mail I get another pack of cigarettes. So someone had to take that data and put it into a database and actually do the work, and then they had to buy
Really?
envelopes, stamps, and more product going into this thing. My guess was that evening cost them about 20 grand. About. I was like, dang. So I asked one of the women, I was like, this, you know, and I did the math quick in my head because I'm paying attention to these kind of things. I was like, wow. So I said, so do you do this all the time? Well, this is a field marketing company. I said, yeah, I understand. You're working for Camel and so forth. But do you do this every night? Well, we have 4 teams out tonight.
Oh, yeah.
This is 1 of 4. That means you guys spend 80 grand. You know what I mean?
But they have very dedicated customers.
Well, yeah. And so my thought was, wow, these cigarette companies spend that kind of money because you can't smoke inside, right? So they're giving it outside, and everyone's out there smoking those cigarettes, right, that were free. So they're branding like crazy,
Right.
but they're spending some big dollars.
Not to mention if they give a smoker that type of cigarette, they have it in their pocket now, they're actually smoking it. I mean, for a cigarette company, that's key.
I think that's too, though. That's like at the end of the year too. We don't have any tax money because it's all out in revenue.
Well, it was an interesting
Yeah,
evening.
Aren't they able to write off some of what, like what was this?
They can write off
Like the CDs
expenses.
or whatever?
Expenses.
Okay.
That's all out. All our money is out, so we pay taxes for money we don't have right now.
and they can write it
So
up.
he's, obviously, he's working on a record label. Would sponsorship tie into that, or like how could that tie in?
Yeah, I've seen it happen. It does, for record label sponsorships, I've seen it happen, but I don't see it very often. And usually it happens when I see a logo of a company on the back of a CD. And that company is marketing themselves through the record label's release. Now, a lot of artists don't want anything to do with that, and I get it. And a lot of record labels don't want anything to do with it either. But some of the smart ones like, money? Give me the money.